So resilience, when I describe it in a coaching environment, talk about it like a spring, just a spring. And that the spring is just not stretched or anything at the beginning, but when you're resilient, you stretch it. So you've gone to a point of adversity for an opportunity, perhaps. Maybe you've got a deadline or something that you need to get done. So an opportunity for growth or achieving something. But then you spring back. Okay. So that's what resilience is. It's going to a point of adversity and springing back.
Hello, everyone, again. I'm John Boitnott here with Everything Entrepreneurship. You've come to a podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs about themselves, their backgrounds, their companies, and how what they're doing can be a lesson for entrepreneurs out there with their companies. Today, I'm joined by Emma Georgiou from the United Kingdom. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Hi, John. I'm good. Thank you. Pleased to be
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Emma, you're a leadership coach and a consultant. You were a scientist for a long time. Tell me about your background, what you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah. So you're right about being a scientist. So I started my career, 20 plus years ago, doing a PhD in biomedical sciences. And then from on there, started working as a scientist, a research scientist in a lab, which then took me on to healthcare communications. So that's like working in agencies where you are the creative agency that supports pharmaceutical companies, the NHS, charities to help them with their strategy. And then moving on from there, I found coaching. So I've been coaching since 2017. I have my own business, coaching and consulting. It's moved away from healthcare, but still do bits of work in healthcare. And I'm working with entrepreneurs and people within organizations as well to help them on their leadership journey.
Yeah, so you do work with entrepreneurs quite a bit. And tell me about that. What is it like working with entrepreneurs on their leadership journey? What are some of the things you work on?
Well, that's really interesting. As I work for myself, I found that when I started this journey that I found it quite lonely and quite isolating. And so I thought, how can I meet people? Because when you're working in an office environment, if you have a down day or something, you talk to people on a Teams meeting and they call you up again. So as I'm missing this, then this is when I started going out and doing some networking. And then you come across a lot of people in the same situation as you, a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners. And what's really nice about that community is they all have the same energy and the same enthusiasm and passion for what they're actually doing. And I found I got a lot from networking. I also met quite a few people who wanted help and support for some of the challenges they faced as they were navigating their journey. So things that they'd be facing would be confidence, not sure where to look next for their next lead, how to I just try to put this into words really. Imposter syndrome is a massive one with that ties up nicely
Yeah.
with the confidence and just helping them to get from where they are to where they want to be. And I know that sounds very vague, but it does vary from person to person.
Before we started the conversation, we talked about self-leadership. And my first obviously part of it's because I didn't wake up too long ago over here on the West, but self-leadership, then I had to think about it. And I think I have an idea of what it's about, but I know that's something you work on with entrepreneurs. What is self-leadership? What is it? How does it help an entrepreneur?
Okay. So when you think about leadership and being a leader, a lot of people automatically assumes that means you have to have or be in an organization or have a company and have millions of people reporting to you to actually be a leader. But actually, we're all leaders in our own lives. We're all responsible for the decisions that we make, where we go, what we do, the people we see, and how we choose to live our lives. So self leadership basically is about starting with yourself, thinking about what you want to achieve, where you want to go, reflecting on your personality traits, the good things, the bad things, the things you're not comfortable with, perhaps, and being happy with who you are, knowing who you are, and leading from that place.
Yeah. And entrepreneurs also, yeah, that sounds like just for me. I think about God, I just have to really slow down and actually think about what's going on in my head to have any kind of self-leadership in my own life. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to build high-level teams, high functioning teams. How does self-leadership connect to that?
So how self leadership connect to building high functioning teams if you need to build them by being happier with yourself and functioning from a place of authenticity. So let's take you as an example, John. Okay.
Okay.
If you spent some time, um, like really thinking about what makes you tick, okay, why you're motivated to do certain things, what makes you happy, the type of people you like interacting with, how you like interacting with them, types of people you don't like interacting with, why you don't like interacting them, the places that you don't like to go to. It gives you a complete picture of who you are. And then this is all stuff we should really know about ourselves. It's a bit deeper down though, isn't it? We don't often think in this way. But if you were to spend some time looking at all of that, you'd then be able to make more informed decisions and choices in what's going on around you. And therefore, how that leads and impacts a team is if you have that team around you, they'll pick up on that you are happy, confident, leading from a place of authenticity. That's one of my favorite words. And hopefully that will ripple out too. And they will all start to work in that way. So you'll have a happier, more effective, higher performing team as a result of being that way. So it's inwards to outwards. And I think a lot of us focus outwards to inwards.
Yes. Yeah. I think that a lot of people avoid, why do people avoid thinking about these things? Why is there that disconnect? Why people are disconnected from themselves? Why are they like that? And how can people, leaders, entrepreneurs start to reconnect themselves?
Okay. So I personally think people are like that because of the way society has evolved, that everything that we do is on our devices, on our phones, on our iPads, and our screens. Whenever we have downtime, we're scrolling on some social media channel or doing something. We're always looking for something outside of ourselves. And then we're seeing the world outside of ourselves. Oh, look how perfect their life is.
Mm,
It's probably not real what we're seeing anyway, but that's not the point. We don't often take the time because we're so used to automatically going and doing these things to actually just sit and think about ourselves. And also, we don't prioritize ourselves. We Because that's that thought time that I'm on about is dedicated time you need to spend on yourself. It's very hard to do that without making an appointment with yourself to do that. So people were more likely to just not do it and constantly focus on getting gratification or whatever they need outwardly rather than inwardly. Does that make sense?
oh, yeah, I see that in my life all the time. I think it's when I do a free moment, one of the first things I do is to go for the phone and start to numb out a little bit on various social networks that we're all halfway addicted to.
It's just something that we're all in.
Oh, not even halfway, more like fully addicted. What can people do to break away from that and start to reconnect? What are some, I don't know, some quick little tips that,
Quick tips.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I am realistic here. I'm not suggesting that people are going to put their phones down and not do that because that's part of life and it's the society we're in and that's how we are now. But making just even 10 minutes dedicated time just for yourself, even if it means putting a calendar invite in your diary saying time for me to think or whatever, and then just consider a few questions each day. 10 minutes, like, how do I want to feel today? What do I want to achieve? What's making me happy? And then at the end of the day, how did that go? What went well? What didn't go well? And then maybe exploring that whole why has that not gone well? And that helps you to get more familiar with yourself. Also, I do believe that setting that intention thing in the morning does help you to achieve whatever you set out to achieve. So
yeah.
it's a double win.
That's great. Yeah, for me, I looking ahead to the day, I've tried to really notice how I feel in the beginning of the day. I think
Yeah.
at some point, I got the idea. Somebody gave me the idea that when you wake up, if things are going pretty well, you're feeling great about the start of the day. Oh, another day! This is so exciting. I'm going to have a great day. And now that doesn't happen very too often. Yeah. But it's not bad, but it's somewhere in between. And so
Mm,
one thing I try to sometimes do, and I forget to do this, is to just see how I do feel. It is to actually just,
okay.
it's like just making that connection. I
How
think
do I feel? Yeah.
it goes along with your advice. Your advice seems to be, a lot of your advice seems to be establish a connection with yourself.
And that's a great way of doing that, what you're saying. And I would urge you to you're saying, how do I feel? I would recognize that and then think a bit more about that. So where do I feel that?
Mm,
Does it generate anything physical in me? Like maybe anxiety could be something in the stomach, if that was something. Or do you get a headache? Or I don't know. It doesn't have to be anything negative like that. It might be something really positive, but just trying to get used to how your body reacts to things too, because they're connected, the body and the mind. So,
yeah. I had a personal coach for some years, and that was one thing
okay.
he always tried to have me do that as well. He always tried, okay, so you're feeling anxiety. Where are you feeling the anxiety? I often found I felt the anxiety like in my chest, like maybe my breath wasn't as good as I would,
Yeah.
as deep as it could be, or there might be like a dull ache or something like that going on. And so definitely, and I remember for a long time I said, "Why does he always ask me this? Why does he always ask me this? I have a t I'm not feeling anything. I don't It's not located in my wrist or something." We didn't figure it out for a long time. And then I started to notice more of a pattern in how
Mm.
I'm feeling in certain areas. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Then I think that I feel something in my chest. It feels dull. Maybe I can say that maybe that's connected to the anxiety.
Yeah. And then seeing that sign, what can I do to what's going on that's making me feel this way? What can I do to prevent this or stop it from getting worse? That's what I mean about building the self awareness and the self leadership piece, because it's recognizing all of this and then taking action, that kind of guided action from yourself.
And I would imagine one of the things that we talked about before was this helps build. I think one of the things entrepreneurs want to be able to do is do what they're doing for a long time. They want
Mm.
resilience. So I suppose just lay it out for us. How does this help actually allow entrepreneurs to have a better, longer, more resilient career?
Okay, so resilience is a really interesting one. And I've done quite a lot of training on resilience. So when
It
we do the
sounds so
training,
great. I think
uh,
everyone wants resilience. I would love to have more resilience. Anyway, sorry.
yes, I've got other stories about resilience that aren't great. We'll come back. There's another time. I don't think there's time today. So resilience, when we describe it, or when I describe it in a coaching environment, talk about it like a spring, just a spring. And that the spring is just not stretched or anything at the beginning, but when you're resilient, you stretch it. So you've gone to a point of adversity for an opportunity, perhaps. Maybe you've got a deadline or something that you need to get done. So an opportunity for growth or achieving something. But then you spring back. Okay. So that's what resilience is. It's going to a point of adversity and springing back. Now, the point when that becomes dangerous is if you're in some particular working environments where you've had to work late, your spring is stretched. Yeah. You've had to work late one night to deliver a piece of work. But then the next night you have to do the same and the same. And your spring is staying where it is, or it may even be stretching further. So that is called toxic resilience. And that's when it becomes dangerous and it can lead to burnout and stress and all kinds of nasty stuff. What I'd like to do through coaching is to help people to recognize what happens when they're at that point of stretch and it's not being comfortable anymore and they haven't sprung back. Maybe they've let go of some boundaries. Maybe they've stopped going to the gym. Maybe they've stopped eating healthily. Maybe their partner thinks they're being really cranky or something. What are those early warning signs that you are at that point of stretch? And recognizing that and then taking action so that it doesn't become toxic and their resilience, they're growing their resilience and they're developing it, but it's not going too far. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that when they push themselves further and further because it is very personal for them. It's their own business, it's their baby, it's their passion, but at the cost of perhaps their health or something.
I love that you, God, I really could have used some advice on that in the times in my life in years gone by when there was a lot of burnout where the springing back wasn't nearly as much. How do you get people? So what are some sort of tips and thoughts you have for the getting an entrepreneur who's facing these difficulties to start to notice that their spring isn't springing back?
Okay. If they can't notice it themselves, that on some level you will notice it yourself, whether it is, I don't know, the rapid heart rate, the horrible feeling of anxiety, or like you're dropping your commitments. You're not seeing your friends as much. You're not going to the gym if that's what you do. You're eating unhealthily. You don't see the joy in the world anymore. It's very much you're just focused on, I've got to do this because I have to do this to earn money.
Mm.
When you stop seeing that, that's the point to see these questions that you're asking yourself will help that. But I would also say if you can't do that for yourself or you haven't got that level of self awareness yet, ask the people around you that care for you, like your friends, other entrepreneurs that you're connected with, your family, anyone who knows you and knows what you're like when you're stressed and when you're not stressed. And listen to what they have to say because they will help you to see. And seeing is the hardest part, I think. Then once you see, you can start to put interventions in place.
How can entrepreneurs who are, and I bet there are just millions of entrepreneurs out there and
Mm.
regular living their regular lives who are going through this right now. What can they do to let go of the old mindset and start something new that is more healthy? And you mentioned authenticity. Does
Mm.
it involve the authentic self, having more authenticity in order to leave behind the, I guess it's perfectionism or whatever it is that's causing people to.
It's funny you say that because my head, first of all, before you said authenticity, went to perfectionism because a lot of entrepreneurs are perfectionists and they have
Mhm.
this passion, this drive. And perfectionism is something that's good to a degree, but then again, like resilience to a point, it can tip or go the other way. So it's working against you. In coaching terms, the perfectionism is could be likened to that voice on your shoulder, that inner critic talking to you and saying, you've not done enough, that's not good enough, or you need to get to there. Not really celebrating the successes, but focusing on those negative aspects. And we all have an inner critic that talks to us. The key again is self-awareness and recognizing that's what's happening and being able to put some distance between yourself and that. So when you hear that voice saying, "Oh, you've not done not a good enough job there," or "You need to do better or work longer," that's my inner critic talking to me. So that immediately moves you away from it a little bit, which is good. Okay, so then turn it around. What would my inner coach say to me instead? And I can imagine, or what if I can't do my inner coach? What would someone I love, or my best friend, or my biggest advocate, my supporter, or my mentor, if you have a mentor, what would they say to me in this moment and help to rewire and your thinking to something more positive?
That is super super helpful. I feel, and it makes me realize, unfortunately, it makes me realize that a lot of there's so many workaholics out there, especially
Mm,
in the real space. Just
sure.
you have to be in entrepreneurship to just get everything completed that you need completed. If you're a workaholic, then what's happening is you. I've noticed this in my own life too. Is you start to push people away who might notice these problems
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
call you out on these problems
Yeah.
and cause you to no longer. I think that one of the fears of a of an entrepreneur who's very perfectionistic is that and they don't slow down and they don't connect with other people because they're afraid that those people will cause them to not be as driven work wise
Okay.
as they.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Have you met entrepreneurs who are like that, or have you seen that, or
Yeah, actually, but I'm guessing I'm going to come across people now that we've had this conversation. They're all going to come out with work. But my guess I wouldn't necessarily come across them in networking situations because they probably aren't putting themselves in those places yet, are they? If they're worried about that.
or they'll go to the networking, they'll do the networking, do it in a very sort of work focused way where they're looking for partnerships, they're
Oh, I see.
for,
Yeah.
looking for folks who can augment the work situation, but they're not
Yeah.
for the interpersonal connection so
Yeah.
much because that doesn't help them with the transactional side of succeeding. I'm sure it's
Interesting. Yeah.
it's a spectrum, right? I'm sure it's
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
yeah,
I'd
but
wonder how successful they were at networking if they were going in for that, just for that transaction.
it depends on how you measure it, right? Like it's for me, I know this because I faced this problem or problem, this whatever it is, situation
Yes.
in my life. I will go to networking events with the not so much with the goal of really getting connections to people personally, but
Mm,
more or the work side of it, and to see if there's a way I can get more work, etc. And in life, it led to being alone more often than I would like, those types of things.
yeah.
And because you don't want to slow down enough to be forced to spend most of your time not working because you're so committed to the work thing, building up a good burnout.
Yeah.
But
Which we've all done by the sound of it.
I think I on and turned this interview into a counseling session for me. But that's fine.
Don't worry.
But is this type of thing fairly typical for the entrepreneurs and the people that you work with and talk to?
Definitely. 100%. Yeah, it's surprisingly common. And now I'm thinking about it again. I don't know why I didn't think it was that common before, but yes, of course it is.
I think it probably ends up the lack of resilience and the it ends up in causing a lot of health problems down the road.
Mm. And burnout again, doesn't it? So burnout's a big one. And then you can't work anyway because you're totally spent.
As far as one of the things is about finding purpose in life, hey, how would this help entrepreneurs find more purpose in life, see beyond their companies? Um, yes,
So, so you mean self-leadership, how that would help them to find their
yeah,
purpose?
totally.
I think they're quite aligned purely because of the self-reflection, the self-awareness, knowing what you like, what makes you happy, what makes you unhappy. then it makes it easier to identify areas that you like being in and more comfortable in. So I think it does help people with purpose. I feel like that's quite a generic way of explaining that, but
No, I
I
can
don't know how else.
no, I can see people actually changing their whole career based on trying to be more closely aligned with what their purpose is. I mean, have you seen that happen with a lot of entrepreneurs? Sort of lean into
So
it.
I have to say, most of the entrepreneurs that I seem to be working with have already done that and are aligning with their purpose on some level, and they can't fit the other way of working. Where I see the shift happening is people in their corporate roles who still haven't been able to make that transition. And one guy that I was working with was saying things like he has to stay in this job because of what it provides him, but it's like a prison, and he knows that he's in this prison, but I just have to furnish it as well as I can because I know that I'm trapped here. He's realized that his purpose lies beyond there. He's made peace with being there. So he's trying to find purpose in other areas of his life and the work that he's doing to tick that box for himself. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for during the course of a day, how can so if people want to try and get more self-connected and develop their self-leadership more, now that
Mm.
they trapped in a prison a little bit, you just started to allude to this. What are some things that people can do during the course of their day just go more in that direction? What are some tips on
Okay.
that?
So
Activity?
there's lots of frameworks for exploring purpose, and I've got one I think linked out on my website, which I can send the link to. But
What is
basically,
what is
sorry.
your website, by the way? How can people get a hold of you just so that we get that?
So www.emmageorgiou.com.
All right, great. We'll get that.
And I can give a link as well afterwards to this finding purpose framework, basically. And it's about exploring what you love, what you enjoy doing, what you're skilled at, what you can make money from, and putting it all together and seeing what comes out of that. For example, if life is such that you have to take that big corporate job because you need to just for the financial reasons,
Mm,
and I don't know, you love being creative. Maybe there's an art class or something that you could do, or there's other ways of kind of fulfilling those needs if by exploring other avenues. It doesn't have to be the way that you earn money. Is my
yeah. Yeah. So during the course of the day, but would it be as simple as, well, I think you already mentioned maybe even blocking off time um, in order to spend time with yourself, um,
Yeah,
with more.
I'd say it doesn't have to be every day. Just when you've got quiet time in the morning, maybe when you're having a cup of coffee before, when you're scrolling through your phone at the start of the day.
I remember I had a one coach at one point. He was a teacher who I didn't actually know that well, but I remember him telling the class, one thing you can do is to just take a half an hour and do nothing and just lie down and stare at the ceiling and just let your mind wander, because that's something that a lot of adults don't do as much anymore.
No, you're so right. And do you know something? As a kid, because obviously I grew up in a generation that was pre the internet, we were bored, weren't we, at times? And we did lie on our beds and just stare at the ceiling some of the time. But I don't
Yeah.
think people these days have time to do that because there's too much, there's devices, isn't there? Even now, I don't think I would do what you just said and lie on the bed for half an hour and just do nothing because
I've tried. It's tough.
yeah, it's hard, isn't
I
it?
can make it several minutes, but then I start to think about a thing or a thing I didn't schedule or a payment
Yeah.
I didn't make or just there's always something. And I get caught up in that. And next thing I know, after I do the thing on my phone, I start looking through YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got, yeah, you're onto something else. So I would say in the morning when you have a cup of tea, pen and paper, if that's your thing, just write a few things down. I find writing much easier than because it's so easy to get distracted when you've got a screen in front of you. But
Mm,
just pen and paper, and it somehow connects differently with your brain and it flows. It just
yeah.
does. So, doesn't have to be long. It's not onerous.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna do that as well. And journaling is a good thing too.
Mm.
Uh, now there's a journaling app
Is
on the
there?
yeah they're there yeah I think there's different ones. I'm on one that a friend recommended, and so I find that that even when I'm attempting to do a self reflection, I still have to go
Yeah.
back. Okay, so we've already been going 26 minutes now. What an interview! This went by so quick. Before we go, what's one message that you hope people take away from this interview?
Okay. I would say that to not be scared of exploring inward thoughts and yourselves that way. Not all answers can be found by seeking them externally online. So take some time to self-reflect, become more self-aware, and see where that takes you. It will only enhance your life.
I love it. Yeah, it's a good step on the journey to making all of this more sustainable for
Yes.
everyone involved. All right, Emma. And again, where can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Emma Georgiou and on my website, so www.emmageorgiou.com.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for educating us on self leadership.
Yeah.
Authenticity. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, John.